Hi, I'm Kelly, and I'm here with Karen, and we're here to answer your questions you may have about grief. So today's topic is it normal to all of a sudden feel alone in the world?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's got to be normal just based on how many people I have had say that. And it doesn't seem to be loss specific. It can be, the loss of a parent, it can be the loss of a sibling, it can be the loss of a spouse. I mean, any of these losses, I think for different reasons, can make us feel alone and lonely. I think for one thing, oftentimes we are mourning the person who made us feel seen and understood. And that feeling, I kind of talk about the word intimacy, and I know it kind of brings up some ideas of like physical intimacy, but to me it's like emotional connections, being able to like be vulnerable with a person, or not be our best selves with the person. Like if we lose that person we can do those things with, you can really feel alone. And what's really hard about that, because I've had people say to me plenty, like, I don't understand, like, I have good family, I have nice friends. Like if we're fortunate enough to be able to say that, then it really doesn't feel like it makes any sense to feel alone. Because if I've lost my husband and my kids call me every day, why am I still feeling that way? um and I think it makes people feel like they're taking their loved ones for granted, perhaps. And so it's like just this kind of icky bad feeling. And so I try to remind people that, like, in oftentimes these circumstances, that what you're missing is that person that provided maybe that sense of like teamwork, or always being on your side, or that unconditional love that we get from a parent. Like there's just different types of like and different types of love. And we may be mourning that very specific feeling that a person gave us. So that's one part. There's like a lot more. What are you thinking about that?
Well, to be honest, I'm thinking about myself after my mom died. And it was right before my 15th birthday, but I felt very alone. And the reason I felt alone was I felt like I was the only teenager going through a loss like
Yeah.
this. And I think I hear that a lot with people. They feel very alone because they feel like, well, no one else they know is going through this. I mean, I even think about some of my colleagues in my office, and they're older than me and they still have, parents and grandparents. And I'm always amazed by that,
Yeah.
like, and so I think it depends on sometimes your network, right? Your support system, and knowing like have other people experience loss as well. And I know for me, when I walked into that first bereavement group that my dad forced me to go to, I finally didn't feel alone.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
think that's what's so powerful and beneficial about grief groups,
Yeah.
right? Is to know that you're not alone, because for some people they truly do. They feel alone. They don't feel like their support system wants to talk about their loved one. They don't feel like they have those resources. I do a pet loss grief group, and I think that's a really common one because pet loss is what's considered a disenfranchised grief, which means it's not always readily accepted by society, right? And so people minimize their experiences and their loss. But for a lot of people, the loss of a pet can be just as difficult, if not more, than a loss of, a human.
Yeah, well, because it's that daily presence. I
Mhm.
think oftentimes we are mourning someone or a pet who had a significant impact on our day, on our routine, how we felt during that time. And going back to the idea of the group, you and I both run groups, and I think we both get to see sort of like that magic that happens in groups. It's one of the things I really enjoy about facilitating a group, is just that sense. Sometimes we'll be doing introductions. We're only getting to like our third or fourth person, and they're like, I already feel better. Like we haven't even like started, and they already feel better because they've heard just a few people share some of the things, that they've been thinking and feeling. Because it is scary to feel like you're doing something wrong, or that, you know, it's supposed to be happening differently. We talk about that a lot, of like how this is supposed to go. And I think what's also really hard for grieving people is feeling alone when they're with people.
Exactly.
And that happens all the time. And in some ways, that's like lonelier. And it's the reason why I think some people can be grieving, will be very lonely. I did a group the other night for people who've lost a spouse, and that was a big topic, was loneliness. And so it's like so many other things. Like if you're hungry, you eat. If you're tired, you sleep. If I'm lonely, go see people. That's like doesn't quite work the same way. I can go and be with other people. It doesn't mean I'm going to have that connection or that I'm going to be able to feel fulfilled at the end of that. And I think usually it's because, as you said, either people aren't going through it or they're not talking about it. And it feels like I just have really one thing that I'm thinking about right now. I can't talk about summer vacation or politics or anything. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
People are grieving this. Like, I just don't care about any of this stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's also, I think, a disconnection where people just feel like maybe that they're not even as good a friend or a conversationalist, but they just can't feel that same connection to people that they did before. Also because they're going through so many of their own changes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So it's a tough one. So I mean, I think going back to that idea of getting support, it's
Okay.
the reason why finding your people in whatever that may be, is so important. And I think in recognizing with these losses, because a big question that comes up a lot is like, why am I having such a hard time? And so when we point out certain things, well, like, this is what you've lost. You've lost that connection, that intimacy. And it's never to make a person feel worse, but it's like, this is why it's so hard. We're mourning a person, but we're also mourning safety that they gave us and connection that they gave us. Like, we are mourning so much more than it seems. And I think, it does contribute to some of those feelings people may have at times.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. A very common feeling.
for sure. For sure. So,
Well, thank you.
yes, absolutely. Thank you, Kelly.
All right. So thank you for watching and stay tuned for more questions and answers. Take care.